some of the drivers have come out very excited about it. I am interested to follow this to see where the course is going to be. Will they be able to race down Constitution and all those things?
It's not going to happen.
So you're saying it's not going to happen?
It's too soon. It's 6 months. It's 6 months. Think about, we should have, our friend who ran.
That's why the American electorate voted for a builder. They put a bill.
I give you credit for keeping a straight face for most of that, calm. Welcome to Wait What? Sportsbiz Chat with DP and McGhee, the podcast where we take a sometimes irreverent, sometimes cynical, and yes, even a sometimes serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, Tim McGhee.
And I'm David Parro.
David, do you have the fever yet? Super Bowl fever I'm talking about.
I definitely have Super Bowl fever, even though I really do not care about either team that much. It's Super Bowl fever time.
Yeah. It's in terms of humble brags, it's the busiest week of the year. People talking about, all the people they've seen and hung out with at Super Bowl, but I'm not jealous.
Yeah. Listen, we're once we get the adequate spot for our production on Radio Row, then we're there. But they've been trying to pigeonhole us in too tight a spot, and it just hasn't been worth it.
So you're leaving the weekend for Super Bowl 72 open, I see.
Right. Yeah.
What's on your mind?
Well, we're going to get to some Super Bowl predictions at some point in this show, but I want to start with the winter games coming off of last week's episode where we had that just, I think, wonderful, funny conversation with 𝗪𝗠𝗪 𝗫𝗫. What a great guy. And talk about a few things related to the winter games, which also are starting on Friday, which is pretty crazy. It just snuck up on us, didn't it? And speaking of 𝗪𝗪𝗫 𝗫𝗫 and luge, I did want to start with the fact that I just thought the timing was so wild that SNL had a great bit picking up off of the NBC promos for the games, and they used three sports. I think ice skating with Chloe Fineman, maybe snowboarding with Marcelo Hernandez, and then with a new cast member, Kate Wickline, I think her name is. She was a luger, and she was a reluctant luger. But we talked to 𝗪𝗪𝗪 so much about how he came to the sport, and it was just really funny, kind of like the fear and the terrifying nature of how fast they're going, and that they're just kind of sent down on this sheet of ice. Anyway, I thought it was funny, and I think hopefully a great promo for luge.
Yeah, and we both got her name wrong. It's actually Jane Wickline.
Jane Wickline, sorry.
Yeah, but she's one of my new favorite cast members. She's very understated, her delivery. But we talked a little bit last week about me going down the luge run. I was filled with great trepidation going down. So
you can relate.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because I did talk to 𝗪𝗪𝗪 the other day about this, and yes, he had seen it. In fact, the person who produced the video is a former USA Luge intern whose father is an executive at Team Worldwide, which is an official sponsor of USA Luge. Yeah. So it's all very incestuous and small worldish.
But wonderful, and I thought the execution was absolutely great on it. And speaking of luge, again, and I guess this, all these things going on, NASCAR and USA Luge announced a partnership this week, which I thought was cool, that NASCAR would be featured on it. And not to go into, because I don't know all the details of this, but there's apparently some sharing of information and so forth. But I love the tagline, speed respects speed. I thought that was a nice play. I like it when properties, particularly U.S.-based sports properties, get behind the Olympic movement and backing any part of Team USA.
Yeah, and they have had some help from teams in the past, but more notably the bobsled team, USA bobsled skeleton, the other national governing body that governs sliding sports. Their design is known as the Bodine sled.
Yeah.
So Jeff Bodine. Speed respects speed. 𝗪𝗪𝗪, if you listen to this, keep me honest. I believe that luge is one of 3 Olympic sports that is timed to the 100th of a second. So you can imagine what a difference makes when you have aerodynamics and the bright minds of NASCAR helping to shave off hundreds, if not thousands of a second to help the athletes compete for medals.
And on a more serious note, and speaking of ice, three national governing bodies that had built a private hospitality space that was originally called Ice House. They decided it was in their best interest to change the name.
I laughed at that because I'm working with a friend of mine by the name of 𝗵 𝗨𝗪𝗲, who's in the Cornell Hall of Fame. He's a fantastic lacrosse player. He retired, but he and some other lacrosse guys run a lacrosse company here in New Jersey called 𝗪𝗏 Lacrosse, and they run youth tournaments around the Northeast throughout the summer. He said, we basically had to rebrand the whole property because one of their tournaments was called Turning Point, which is Charlie Kirk's organization. And then they had a program for ICE, and I can't for the life of me remember me what the acronym ICE stood for, but they got rid of that and then renamed it to the National Development Program. You know, they're putting out some of the best lacrosse players in the country through this program, but they had to change two of the names of their properties.
Well, just so everyone knows, if they are looking for it on site, it is now Winter House.
Yes, yeah. And I said to my friend Mitch, I go, well, good thing you didn't have the KKK tournament.
And I don't mean to continue going on, so you can jump in on this, but I guess in a related story, since hockey is part of the games, the sport of ice hockey is part of the Winter Games, that I think it's time we talked about heated rivalry and its impact on, I guess, the zeitgeist of
it certainly has
culture.
broken. It has certainly broken through. I have not watched it yet, so I can't speak from personal experience of what the show is like. But I do know that it has resonated and has, and Commissioner Bettman has noted that it has brought in new fans to the sport. So for some of you who don't know, Heated Rivalry is a Netflix series. Is it Netflix?
No, it's on HBO Max.
HBO Max, okay. But it is about two gay junior level hockey players who commence a relationship, if I understand correctly.
Well, you're close. I haven't seen the entire series, but I have seen several episodes. And it's a romance novel focused on a gay relationship between hockey players. And these hockey players elevate to the international level and are actually playing in a pseudo NHL. They meet as they're before at least in the series version of it. It is based on a series of books, actually. And one of the players, who's Russian, gets drafted either one or two, ends up playing on the Boston team, and one who is Canadian ends up playing on the Montreal team, which was a family favorite team. And they're about to go to the Sochi Olympics, actually. That's where it stopped for me, so I haven't gotten past that. And then they introduce another character who is gay as well that plays for the New York team. So, yeah, there's no doubt it has had that impact. And part of the reason I thought it was important for us to finally talk about it, because we've certainly spent our fair share of time talking about the impact that Drive to Survive has had on Formula One and the viewership. So StubHub has spoken about, searches for hockey tickets kind of going off the chart since this, casual fans that haven't followed the sport looking into it. It's also, I don't think we can cover this without also talking about, it's been a little interesting in this era that we are in now, where there is somewhat of a movement, not somewhat, there is a movement against some of the DEI efforts that were so pronounced several years ago, that have done away with their Pride Night or moved to more of a hockey is for everyone type of all lives matter, if you will, approach to that. And certainly the teams and the players have their choice whether they're going to respect that. But it seems to me to be kind of interesting, given that this series has helped fuel interest in the sport, and particularly the NHL, while some teams are walking away from Pride Night.
Yeah, it's sort of like Drive to Survive and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift got married and their kid was Heated Rivalry, right? So it's the sports angle, but it's also the how do we attract a non-traditional fan into our ecosystem. And I don't think the NHL was formally involved in the show, if I'm not mistaken. But
no marks, no official marks.
Yeah, but they are certainly reaping the benefits of it. I don't teach it anymore. I used to have my kids do a case study on the WNBA, because the WNBA was the first league that specifically targeted the LGBTQ community to attract new fans. What they found was a lot of members of that community were coming to the games anyway without being actively sought after as fans. But more importantly, what they found was that audience, the LGBTQ audience, over-indexed in terms of household income, education level, all of the things that a marketer or a sports organization looks for in its audience members. And so then they made the concerted effort. This was probably going back 10, 15 years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if the NHL starts to make a more concerted effort to attract that audience, because you have to grow your audience, and you can't, if you are exclusive as opposed to inclusive, and I'm not talking about DEI initiatives, I'm just talking about in general who you're as a league want to have as big a tent as possible, right? You want to attract as many fans as you can.
Well, I think what would be interesting to follow is are there interests that would see that as continued DEI effort, and we know that there are communications going out to companies that have actively participated in what are openly DEI type of efforts to say that you may be in violation of certain rules and regulations that are now somehow established. So I agree with you. It's just a marketing decision, right? We're going to market to a certain audience.
Yeah, listen, we try not to get political on the show. Sometimes it's inevitable. Think of those three words: diversity, equity, and inclusion, and tell me what's wrong with any of them. And if your argument is that those programs give preferential treatment to minorities, whether it's people of color, people of the disabled community, people in the LGBTQ community, I would argue back, that's not the purpose of DEI rules and policies. What the purpose of those is to ensure that a less qualified white person doesn't get the job simply because of the virtue of his or her skin color. Now, I'm not going to convince certain people that that's the intent of DEI, but if you choose to look at it through that lens, it starts to make a lot more sense. I worked at an agency where there was a lot of diversity, and across the board, whether it be ethnically, gender, whatever. Really enjoyed being in meetings with those people simply because you got such a varied perspective on trying to solve our clients' business problems. So I'm a big fan of it. I've seen it work extremely well.
We took on Olympic-related stuff there for a bit there. So what do you have?
You know that now that the season over is, I am a Jet fan again because they are undefeated for the 2027 or 2026 season. And as a Jets fan, I am not a very big fan of the New England Patriots. But I do believe what happened in the most recent Hall of Fame voting, where Bill Belichick was kept out, some say as a form of punishment for Deflategate and Spygate, I just think it's absolutely a travesty that this guy was kept out of the NFL Hall or the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They are not formally connected to the NFL, but they are the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Robert Kraft, who I don't think anybody can argue his success as an owner, 6 Super Bowl championships. Now he's back very quickly. So, look, for example, at the Chicago Bulls and the success or lack thereof that they've had since Michael Jordan retired all those years ago. Now compare those to the New England Patriots, where you lose Belichick and Brady and come back in 5 years, and now you're playing in the biggest game in the world.
I'm trying to figure out who or what is the most to blame in this situation. Apparently, 11 people didn't vote for Belichick. I'll focus on Belichick for a minute. But you're part of a voting committee for awards, so maybe you get this stuff a little better. But the way I understand it is that in the category that Belichick was in consideration for is also the former player, like the former player that is, has retired years and years and years ago. And there were 3 players, I think, in that, Belichick and Kraft. So it was kind of a combined category of former players, long since passed when they played, owner and coach. And the voters could vote for 3 of those 5, I guess. And it looks like 𝗪𝐿𝐶 Greenwood and whoever the other players were are getting into the Hall of Fame, maybe. Obviously, Belichick and Kraft both deserve to be in there. But I don't even get why a coach and an owner are in the same category. I really don't.
Yeah, if you think about it, there should be a contributor, there should be an owner, there should be a coach, and there should be players.
Yeah, or if a coach is like a special contributor, someone that's made the game better, obviously has had success. Because I don't think an owner necessarily should be judged just on whether or not his team wins. Clearly, Kraft has been a successful owner in that regard. But he's also the number 1 or number 2 most powerful owner in the game, right?
Yeah.
Would you say, with Jerry Jones?
Yeah, no, I would say so. I'm trying to think anybody else, maybe in the past,
maybe the Hunt family has gotten, is pretty serious, but they play in a smaller market. Kraft is tight with every power broker that touches the NFL.
I think it's absurd. And I don't know if in fact this was punishment and it was sort of collusion among voters. I don't know how the voting process works for the Hall of Fame, whether or not they convene in a room or whether they just simply put their vote, they talk informally amongst themselves and they submit their votes anonymously. I don't.
Several of the no votes have come out because it was such a uproar when it was first heard, particularly a columnist from the Kansas City market that explained his vote and said it was because of the people that he felt should be voted on and he just couldn't necessarily do it. But if those 5 are in that mix and Belichick with his accomplishments, there's not really a question. That just seems like a silly argument in that. If you go by accomplishment, and yes, maybe let's make him wait because of the scandals, but most of the players have come out and said, well, that's ridiculous because every coach is always looking for an edge.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson came out and said, yeah, we tried to do the same thing. Right. I mean, he's no longer in the fraternity, so he doesn't have to suffer any repercussions. He's already in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But the fact of the matter is that, and I'm not condoning what Belichick did, but, would they have won fewer than 6 Super Bowls if he hadn't tried that? And don't even start me on Deflategate, which is just absurd.
Yeah.
On its face. I learned in 6th grade, 7th grade physics, right? When you're going to lose pressure when it gets colder.
One of the other, I think, pretty bogus arguments was that, well, some people might have thought that he was going to come back and coach again, and you have to be out for a year.
He's been out a year.
Well, no, but he may still come back, so we'll hit him again when he comes back after that.
Well, then you put it on pause. But he's not coming back. At least this year, so he will be out at least 2 years because all the coaching vacancies have been filled, and we can have a whole episode on the Rooney Rule turning into a bit of a farce because Robert Saleh was the only non-white coach to be hired in this latest round of coaching openings.
Right, which made Roger Goodell address that situation at his press conference while he wasn't talking about the halftime show in the Grammys.
Sometimes he has easier press conferences than others. Between Steve Tisch, Bill Belichick, Bad Bunny, I'm surprised somebody didn't ask him about O.J. Simpson and Ray Caruth, for God's sake. I mean, but the way he handled himself with such aplomb is a testament to why he's lasted over 20 years as the commissioner.
As a Jets fan, were you excited that it was Tisch and not your man Woody?
When I was at IMG, our president was a guy named Peter Johnson, and he was also an agent. He was a wonderful guy. One of the clients that Peter Johnson represented was Joe Montana. Joe Montana was on Howard Stern show, and the name Peter Johnson came up, and Howard Stern, in his inimitable style, said, wait a second. Your agent is named after two nicknames for penises? And he made Joe Montana get Peter Johnson on the phone. Well, Woody Johnson, I snicker every time I hear his name. He is married to a classmate of mine from Cornell University.
From your high school?
No, from Cornell University. What else you got?
We will probably take up the Tisch thing at another point to see because he's embroiled as much as Casey Wasserman, it seems, but we'll talk about that at another point.
There is no way that you being mentioned in relation to the Epstein files can be spun in a positive way. Now, whether or not you're guilty of a crime, whether or not you're guilty of misconduct that may not rise to a level of a crime is very different. What I'm simply saying is that nobody says, oh, he was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, but in a good way.
At best, it can be slightly less than neutral. At best.
Yeah, I mean, poor judgment is going to work its way into your obituary.
Right. We are going to have to do a whole bit on that because there are a lot of people on the tied up in sports, at least the ones that we've heard yet. But we'll see what the impact is. We don't want to be salacious about that. Before we take a break, I was taken a little by the story and the fact that I had no idea you could just create an event by presidential executive order. And I'm not saying that was it, because obviously Roger Penske, who's the owner not only of IndyCar Series but of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, was very behind wanting to do a race in Washington Washington D.C. in celebration of 250th. But to do it with this little timing and planning behind it, and to have to do acts of Congress just to get the sponsorship enabled, and having to at the last minute involve Monumental, which of course owns the Caps and the Wizards. To help sell.
You've got the National Trust for the Mall, which controls the area around the mall, which is no doubt going to be. It was just so poorly conceived.
But I guess my point is, had we known that, would we have not just gone that direction, earlier in our career, and said, "Make this event for me. We want to do it on the mall."
What he is going to find is that executive orders sometimes do not carry the weight he believes they do.
Well, a race of this magnitude, an IndyCar race that's, these high-tech machines racing at high speeds through the streets of a tough traffic market anyways, by the way, in August, late August, which if you've been to Washington, D.C. in August, isn't the most comfortable temperature-wise. Now,
but it is. But despite that, it is very packed with tourists throughout the summer season, from Memorial Day through Labor Day.
And they've announced it as free, though, which I don't know how they're going to make that happen. They've announced it. I mean, the Secretary of the Interior.
Sean Duffy is apparently involved. The Secretary of Transportation. What happens when people stop being polite and start getting real? In the words of my late great friend Tim Mulligan, I call bullshit on this one.
I know that some of the drivers have come out very excited about it. I am interested to follow this to see where the course is going to be. Will they be able to race down Constitution and all those things?
It's not going to happen.
So you're saying it's not going to happen?
It's too soon. It's 6 months. It's 6 months. Think about. We should have, our friend who ran.
That's why the American electorate voted for a builder. They put a bill.
I give you credit for keeping a straight face for most of that, Com.
Well,
we should have our friend who ran the Chicago street race on, who can tell us 150
me,
reasons.
I've been thinking about Julie on that, and whether who they're going to hire to put in charge of running that thing, because it's got to be someone that knows how to run a street race in a major city. And DC has a great public. People like to rave about the metro. But it's fairly old system, and it doesn't cover that much of the city yet. Still, I compare everything to New York City, which covers every
or London
square inch, or London.
Yeah, it's more of a spoken wheel type situation.
Correct.
Yeah. Listen, don't get me wrong. I think any road course race in Washington D.C. would be phenomenal. If you're a TV producer, you're salivating for some of your establishing shots and some of your background shots. I mean, it's unbelievable. But to pull it off in 6 months, I just think it's not going to happen. One more thing before we take a break.
When do you want to do Super Bowl predictions, by the way?
Why don't we do it? We'll do it on the close.
All right.
We'll make our listeners wait.
Because they have so much patience with us.
Yes. So we talked last week about who was it who signed with Major League Soccer? How quickly I forget.
That one was Polymarket.
Polymarket, yeah. Polymarket signed. Notably absent from this year's Super Bowl ads will be prediction markets. Roger Goodell has said no prediction market ads. So that's a pretty strong statement. When you're giving up potentially between $8 and $10 million a unit, and you're telling NBC, sorry guys, you can't do it. Now, NBC's already sold out, so it's really sort of a moot point. But it is it is a pretty clear statement that the NFL is making.
There's so much to come on these prediction markets and what they mean, and gaining an understanding of what makes them different, but still will end up leading to sports betting, sports gambling, because that is apparently where all the movement in these markets is. It is different, and apparently, from what I've been learning, is that the 𝗕𝗭𝗏𝗍𝗪 and the poly markets, the two top players here, it's not a house situation, so they can't lose, because to place a bet or a prediction, it's just a market that's established. It's an event that's established, and there's one side of it and the other side of it. You don't get in if there's not another side of it. So it's just, and they're just probably taking the cut, right? So it's seems, and I don't understand, you, me, the head of the gaming association, seem to see where this is fraught and more easily manipulated when it comes to what's happening on the field of play. But other people don't see it that way, because I guess it has proven it's been a different thing. And there was a great, if you haven't listened to the latest Pablo Torre Finds Out, he has somebody that I've admired for a while because I read his book, Wisdom of Crowds. That was the basis of these, or a basis of what these prediction markets are. James 𝗟𝗏𝗂𝗏, I don't know if you're familiar with him, or the book, The Wisdom of Crowds. It's unbelievable look at how people, given the right circumstances and given independence from each other, will make a better decision than an individual. And that's kind of the idea of the markets, of these prediction markets. Anyway, he was a guest on when Pablo Torre Finds Out, and I haven't even gotten through the entire episode, but it was a fascinating discussion. I think we give Pablo Torre a lot of promotion. I'm not sure why he's not backing us.
I wish he would return the favor. You and I have been around this market long enough, or this business long enough, to remember when the Houston Astros took money from Enron, when a bunch of Major League Baseball teams took money from a company called SpongeTech. Right? These were companies that were scams at their base. They were running fraudulent business, and SpongeTech in particular left significant number of teams high and dry when it came to paying their sponsorship fees. Now, I'm not saying that these guys won't, but I do think that the potential for scandal is just, to me, would be prohibitively high to take the risk. Yeah. That's just me. All right. What do you say? We take a break?
Do it.
It's time for our guest.
We have a guest that I personally am really excited to have on. I would not be exaggerating to say he's a hero of mine in the sports marketing industry. Brandon Steiner is a self-described serial entrepreneur, but I think that really understates what he has done for the sports industry. He has, in effect, created the sports memorabilia industry when he launched Steiner Sports. He is still very active in the collectibles and memorabilia space, and we are excited to have him. Brandon, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody that supported me at Steiner. Now it's Collectible Exchange. It's a marketplace which is probably about 10 times the size of Steiner now, which is unbelievable how it's taken off, and just so grateful to be able to stay in something that I love and making sure that fans, customers like it. And getting them the stuff that they want, getting them closer to the game, stuff like that. But so it's nice to be here today, and it's been amazing. I'm almost 40 years in on this business. It's crazy.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. You started your career. You came out of Syracuse University, and for those of you who don't see Brandon on our video clips, he's representing Syracuse with his pullover. But you came out of school. You went into the hospitality industry. So how did you make the leap from hospitality to autographed memorabilia? What was the genesis? What was the spark for you to start Steiner Sports?
Well, I mean, first of all, I lived with a Division I running back, in college. So, I got some early indications of what it's like, to be around, in a professional team player, the excitement. So I had a little bit of an idea, but, the bottom line is, the job that I got before Steiner was a big break, the Hard Rock Cafe. And as assistant general manager, it was the first Hard Rock the two owners had split up. One opened up one in LA, one in New York. I mean, now everybody knows them all over our hotels, and it's a chain. But back then, there was only two of them. So that was a big break. But I always thought the Hard Rock would be much cooler, but with a sports theme. And there were no satellites, no cable back then. So doing a sports theme restaurant probably didn't really make sense, but that's how I saw it. And I ended up opening up one of the first sports bars, one of the first electronic ones. Only two sports bars in 1984. So when I opened up this sports bar with a guy named Billy Rose, who's a limited partner of the Yankees, a lot of athletes came in, and that's kind of how the connection got made. I was doing everything I saw work at the Hard Rock, and I kind of put my own spin on it with sports. And it worked. And I met a tremendous amount of sports people at a time when the sports business wasn't that big. We were looking at 1985, 84. And when I couldn't open up my own place, which would have been like an ESPN Zone, that's the vision I had before ESPN Zone opened up. I had that idea of opening up an interactive sports bar with games, a pop a shot, and a hockey rink. I decided to open up a marketing company because all the players would come in and people started calling me, can you get this player? Can you notify that player? My Rolodex, back in the day, the thing you held all the business cards on, was unbelievable. I had so many players' phone numbers and everything else. So I just decided to figure out a way to help the players. I've written 4 books, and the first 2 really elaborate. And if anybody's listening, if you email me at brandonsteiner1981@gmail, I'll send you a free copy of the book. Because it really elaborates the detail. Like, most people want to, they want to look at the view, but they don't really want to get into the climb. They want to do what I'm doing, but they don't want to do what I did. It's like, it was a steep climb. I mean, it wasn't like snap, crackle, pop. Right now, there's an easy entry point into sports marketing, so to speak. Even if you want to try to represent players or if you want to get in the collectible thing. But back then, this didn't exist. There were only a couple of companies in the whole country that were even doing marketing of players.
Yeah.
So my original company, the first 8 years, was just marketing players, which no one was doing. And I was representing a bunch of companies. I would just call companies up all day and say, I think you need a player to go to your trade show. You need a player to go to your store opening. And I was lucky enough in the early 90s where there was a big retail boom. Kmart, Walmart, Sports Authority. There was just a lot of big, giant stores opening up. And the vendors would hire me to bring athletes in to create activity in the stores. And that's how I got to meet a lot of athletes. 1991, I probably did over 2,000 appearances myself with like an intern and an office chair of a assistant.
David, before you get to your question, Brandon, I first met you in 1992. I was a kid coming out of business school who wanted to get into sports. And I reached out to you, and you were so kind and generous with your time. And I have always remembered that. So I just want to thank you publicly for that. We've seen each other a few times over the years, and I know I thanked you there, but I just want to thank you in front of this audience.
Yeah, I think, I want to say, Tim, listen, I've been very fortunate and extremely grateful to have some of the luck I've had. But I think the most important thing is, like, I'd like to tell people that are listening is that it's making a lot of money and having successful is actually relatively easy if you're really going to get committed and really work hard with purpose and conviction. But staying who you are, that's hard. Like most people that know me would say, the thing that's unusual about Brandon is, man, how much success and who he knows, what he's done, he stayed the same. Yep. And, in Brooklyn, like, one of your friends or somebody comes and needs help, you help them. That's what you do. You help them. And, so I've always enjoyed the reason, like, why we're here on this planet is to help others. So when people have come to me over the years, I know I've been blessed to have, and now it's not as much of a secret weapon, but, the sports business in the 90s, early 2000s was a secret. How do you get in? What's really going on? I mean, and to share with that and get people's careers started. I've got a lot of people out there whose careers I jump-started. It's been just a blessing. So, help your neighbor, try to be as kind as you can. Lead with love and kindness to try to help people, and all that stuff comes back.
We have a question coming up later that you can dive into that even more, because that's a very important piece of the DP and McGhee Sportsbiz chat. Wait, what podcast element?
Yeah,
we will get to that. Sorry to jump in there, but we did want to talk. It's Super Bowl week, of course. The NFL is such a powerful brand. Anything you can speak to on the power of of the NFL brand as it relates to the collectible market, and not only the NFL Shield, but of course the related team marks and Super Bowl event marks.
I think when you look at the NFL, every now and then it's an anomaly. I mean, there's something that happens that makes no sense. I mean, not even to get into disturbance, like Donald Trump being our president, like especially for a first star, makes no sense when you think about it. Like, had no political experience, and boom, Amazon makes no sense when you really think about the dominance and what they've created from what they started. And I think the NFL is right there, and it makes no sense. There's nothing that they could do that disturbs the kind of passion and commitment that they get from fans. I've seen it right now. I'm taking down the Highmark Stadium up in Buffalo and selling off those pieces. And I've never seen the fanatical fans and commitment that I'm seeing. I don't think we've seen the NFL at its biggest. I think they go international. It's amazing how many television channels that they have incorporated into their portfolio and how much money they make before they even turn on a light. It's nice to see the players getting paid better, which they are, which is great. But I think overall, this is one of those leagues that's untouchable. I think the NBA is probably my favorite league as far as the way they've gone about their business. Solid growth. They've gotten their players completely on the same page. You rarely see NBA players. I'm not saying completely, but you don't see a lot of NBA players in trouble. The teams do a great job in their marketing. The players are pretty well buttoned up as far as they're in sync with what the league wants to do. They got a great relationship with the union, and they're going to go global. And they are neck and neck, but it's very difficult to. The NFL owns one of the days a week for like 7 months. That's pretty incredible. The NBA doesn't have that same dominance, but I think they have a better chance when they go international of being successful than the NFL.
Interesting. You were very successful with Steiner Sports. 2,000 appearances in a single year is unbelievable by any measure. What went into your decision to sell Steiner Sports to Omnicom in, I think it was 2000? And what was it like working for one of those big holding companies after having been on your own for so long?
Well, I got to a certain point that I was going to partner with a bank, or I was going to have to find a whole bunch of money to grow. And I think, when you're in business, the number one objective is to grow, figure out how you can do better and how you can be the best at what you do. And I didn't think I was going to be able to do that on my own, given some of the circumstances, particularly inventory, receivables. I was trying to do business with some big companies, and the receivables get big and the inventory is starting to get large. So I don't regret it. I mean, I knew Omnicom really had nothing to do with, it was kind of almost like a complete, incredible, the fact that they bought me. It's a Fortune 200 company, and it had nothing to do with collectibles or sports marketing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was just about getting the roof over my head bigger, is why I did it. I knew they'd give me the chance to go build out the dream that I had, which is exactly what I did, building out the facility. If any of you have been up to the old Steiner Sports, those are facilities that are not cheap, inexpensive to build. It's tough working for a big company. It was good for a while, but, they really never really got too engaged with what I was doing and really understanding what I was doing. And in a business like mine, where it's really not a lot of common sense to how these collectible things work,
mm-hmm.
It became a little problematic. It certainly helped me grow and build my brand and helped me into the name that I am today. But it wasn't a lot of fun, particularly the second half of it. And most entrepreneurs that sell their company, if you interview them, which I did before I sold, they all said it's not going to end well. It's like it rarely, rarely ends well because they do own you, and at some point they could fire you. And at some point, they're not going to agree with what you want to do. So I knew that, but I thought, having a certain amount of wealth and security and being able to enjoy some of the wealth while I was young enough with my kids was worth it.
It's so funny that you say that, because I was at SFX when that news broke that you had been bought by Omnicom, and it was like one of those wow, that was a big move in the industry. Like, I feel like any of us that were back in the day working in the business remember when that moment was. And since I was at SFX when all
it was WTF. More like it, it's like, how did this guy pull that shit off?
No, it was. We were all very impressed.
I want to mention one thing. What people don't understand is it's not that you have to make a myriad of a million great things to have happen. If you look at some of the greatest players that have ever played sports, it's usually one moment of time that's made them that player that you're not going to forget. Mm-hmm. And I tell salespeople all the time, all you have to do is make one great sale. One. And on that day when I went up to Madison Avenue to talk to Omnicom, I was in a zone. I felt it. I had the dream. I had no plan, by the way. But I went in there. I just got in a zone, and I had a clear picture of what I dreamt of that I thought my company could be one day. Granted, I have no freaking idea what I was talking about. No idea. But I really had this complete dream and vision about what I think maybe it could be. And I had indication based on a few really successful things that already happened that maybe that could happen. And those guys bought in and they believed me.
Any major points of differentiation you would say between the collectible exchange and Steiner Sports?
Complete. I mean, I had collectible exchange idea when I was at Steiner. It would have been extremely disruptive, but you remember, I'm like 50 million autographs I've secured over the years and $60 million of dirt. And, I've done a lot of really cool things, but I felt like at the end of Steiner, and maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I can't tell. At that time, I just felt like we were just cranking out autographs by the thousands. And I just felt like, where are all those people going to sell all this stuff? Where's it all going? I don't think the kind of customers we had at the right place was eBay. Although I'm a fan of eBay now, but I'm not sure if you have a big collection, selling it or trading it and trading up would be eBay. So I felt like we had built up a strong enough name where an exchange would be appropriate. Where if somebody was dying or they needed a downsize, they would need a place to go. And that's Collectible Exchange is that vault. It's a place where players, people that got used collections, especially in the baby boomers, we threw out nothing. And I felt like there was an opportunity to have a place where people could bring their collections. We could sell the stuff off with a little dignity and class, as opposed to these auction platforms where they were just trying to blow the stuff up. Sometimes you got pennies on the dollar, unless you had something really proprietary. And I think I've guessed right. I mean, again, another situation where I got into it, so I was thinking of retiring, then I start this company, because I have this idea in my head, no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. So screw it, I'm going to do it. I figured if I don't do it, no one's going to do it. It's another big premise of mine, which is I felt like that way at Steiner on a whole bunch of things. Like, if I don't go do this, no one's going to do it. And you have to, if you're going to lead an industry, do things for the common good, not really just for your own good, which most leaders in a lot of industries don't get that. It's all about them, their company. But they have to realize if you're leading an industry, you've got to be concerned about the overall welfare of that industry and growing it. And as it grows, you're going to grow. So I always supported competitors that were helping grow the business, knowing that would ultimately help me too. And that's what I do with the Collectible Exchange. It's like people are bringing hundreds and thousands of items. Like, I think by the end of the year, we may get up to over 1 million items on our exchange. We're already at a few hundred grand, a few 100,000 items. And stuff's just doing incredibly well. And the shopping experience is amazing because I'm selling stuff that most other collectible websites don't have. I'm getting stuff from 20, 30, 40 years ago that we haven't seen. I need to go to therapy, by the way, after a lot of these collections come in, because I'm seeing stuff I created 30 years ago. I don't know where my head was at. I'm like, wow, I can't believe
That's hilarious.
this. Because, a lot of stuff I created in the 90s, particularly early 2000s, was very new, original. Like, wow, I can't believe this guy thought of that. Selling grass, selling a brick, putting teams together, do team signings. I mean, I came up with a lot of new ideas of how to do these collectible things so that they really were collectible and they were fun for the fans.
Yeah. I thank you. I'm not sure my wife thanks you for all the space that Steiner authenticated stuff takes up in my house, but you've worked with countless athletes. What's the key to not falling into the trap of becoming a fan while doing business with these guys and gals?
Oh, I think the opposite, actually. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think staying a fan is critical. I mean, the athletes I've known for years and years, I must maintain some kind of fandom for me to really see them and what they're about and be able to transfer it over to the fan. If not, I'm going to miss it. Okay. So I think, keeping some level of fandom, I think the question is, how do you keep the relationship going with that player so we can consistently put together product lines and stuff, and they trust you to do so? And I think it's like anything else in sales. It's a value proposition. It's like, a value is what you can do for someone they can't do for themselves. My biggest challenge is figuring out something that a player needs that they really can't quite get themselves. If I could do that for that player, then I'm on my way, So Right now, I'm working on a couple Yankee rookies, trying to find them an apartment. Like, it's not exactly what I do. I'm not a broker, but if I can help them get a deal with a building and an apartment that's cheaper than what they normally would get, now it creates some value in our relationship. The collectible thing, once I get some certain value propositions straightened out with the players, and I'm able to help them, whether it be their charity, an auction they're doing, something they're doing for a cause that's important to them, something that I need to do for one of their relatives, then they know that I'm like, there's nobody better in the business than me when it comes to these collectibles, but it gives me an edge of them working with someone else versus me.
We're going to put you on the spot. And I know I've been asked this question, and I'm sure Tim has been as well. And I fear that it may be like asking you, Brandon, which is the favorite of your, children or something. But can you give us a few athletes that you've really enjoyed working with, ones that just stand out in terms of that working relationship?
I look at like the relationship I have with athletes to answer that question similar to how like an athlete would get in the Hall of Fame. Have they changed the game? Like if athletes change the game, maybe they put them in the Hall of Fame. Has this athlete had a profound effect on me to change the way I view my business, help me grow it? That's how I look at my favorites. So, I have to start with Mark Messier, who, first of all, took a big risk on me, when it was really my first guy who really took the big risk. And really, 𝗙𝗵𝗏 𝗪𝗠 was the other one back in around 94. Messier winning the cup, 𝗍𝒠 getting into the Hall of Fame, been huge. Mariano Rivera, more from a faith and from just a big name, but also, learning how to do it in a little bit more of an unusual way, not having to take every dollar off the table, but learning how to really, he was the guy who trusted me to go build out his fan base and do things a little bit untraditionally. And he let me do it. Another guy that I'm working with recently, 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗲 𝗍𝗂𝗏, who's a young guy, who's really enabled me to understand what it's like to be a young person in the sport of baseball, what it's like to be a rookie, what it's like to play in the minor leagues, and the difficulties. And it reminds me how important it is right from the beginning to build a brand. A lot of players, they just think the most important thing is for them to play well and everything else will work out. And partially that's true, but it's so important when a player is young to be building their brand. I tell the same thing to a kid in high school and college. Like, don't wait till you graduate. You build your brand as early a possible time as you can. I feel like I was building my brand when I was like 12. That was a great punch, a great little, having 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗏 remind me of the fundamental things you need to do on a day-to-day basis to win fans over and create a fan base. Just really important. There have been so many different players. Muhammad Ali was another big one too, man. Just had a profound effect on me. His generosity and his just relentless pursuit to try to help people and connect and engage with people is second to none. And remind me how important it is to get out there. One of the reasons why you'll find me in front of my store at Yankee Stadium and all those years, and just constantly just trying to be out there and being generous. That's kind of what I got from Muhammad.
Yeah.
Brandon, we typically have two questions that we ask at the end of each interview, but you already answered the first one. How'd you get your start in the business? So we have one more question before we let you go. What is the one piece of advice you have for a young person looking to break into the sports industry in particular, but business in general?
I think the most important thing is find your gift. Your gift is like what comes easy to you and hard to most. When people talk, I want to get in the sports business, like, I don't even understand what that means, or any business. Like, what's your gift? Are you good with numbers? Are you good with PR? Are you good with promotion? Are you good with marketing? Are you a back-end person? Are you a technology person? Like, find your gift. And a lot of that gift has already been obvious. Don't worry about whether it makes you money or not. What was the thing that came easy to you all through? That's the only reason to go to college. You realize that you have to take all these stupid classes. Some you hate, some you love, some you're so scratchy and why do I even take them? But it's all to help you find your gift, to figure out what you do that comes easy to you, that you could be incredible at, and your brain's not going to connect. Like, I know I'm never playing a music instrument. I tried. It's not ever going to work out for me. And I tell people all the time, I tell young kids, like, find your gift. And behind that gift, when you find a gift, you have an indication that there's something that you do that comes easy. Pour curiosity, which is really another word for a road to growth. Check your level of curiosity and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, the root word of enthusiasm, is to be with God. So what you need to do is you find your gift, you pour curiosity onto that gift with enthusiasm, with faith. That if you go and deep and do everything you can to be the best at what you can be at that gift, that it'll work out, that got you covered. And I think you have to have some faith. And a lot of that is looking at something down the road, working your tail off, but also not being able to even know what it's going to be and see it. Because some of the greatest successes, if you talk to people that have had the luck of being successful, they'll tell you they had no idea this was even coming. All they knew is they were trying to be the best of what they could do, and they were good at it. And they wanted to provide the best service or product they could. And you do that with a little faith and curiosity, be right on your road to extraordinary behavior.
Brandon, I can't thank you enough for that advice. I saw David shaking his head when you were talking about, but in a positive way. We ask every one of our guests that question, and that's right near the top, if not at the top, of some of the advice that we've been given by people. So thank you for that, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Email me for the book, put it in the notes. Happy to send you a free book. Just pick which one of the 4 you want. I've written 4 books. I think I got another one up my sleeve, although my wife's not going to be happy about it. And, follow me on social, man. I'm posting all the time, different content. I'm not the average 67-year-old, man. I post every day, multiple times, all kinds of stuff. If you want, follow me.
You share with me.
Covered there, Tim, in the first part of the show, but we are at that final stretch of the show, the time we give shout outs and take a peek ahead, Tim, and importantly, make our Super Bowl prediction. So, Tim, what do you have your eye on, though?
What do I have my eye on? The Super Bowl, of course. I'm curious to see what kind of numbers that alternative halftime show gets. My sense is it's not going to be very popular at all. We come out of Super Bowl, we go right into Daytona 500. So the Clash was supposed to be this past weekend, but freak snowstorms in Charlotte postponed that until tomorrow. So I'm curious to get back to some racing too.
Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff coming up. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but I know there's one thing, and then the Olympics. Opening ceremonies on Friday, and then luge starts on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to the hockey tournament. Now that the NHL players are back for the first time in 12 years, I think it's going to be great. Apparently, the rink is ready to go.
Yes.
But yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. And the last 2 Winter Olympic Games were not very successful in terms of viewership here in the U.S. There is still a significant time difference. I think it's 6 hours to Milano Cortina. But the way it works now, I think I'm excited. To me, this is going to be the first AI Olympics, right? This is going to be the Olympics where NBC and its networks use AI to really enhance the viewer's experience in terms of what they deliver to customers, in terms of suggestions and things like that, recaps and highlights and things like that. So it's going to be interesting. And I know you've got something which I had, but I had to come up with something else. So what's on your mind?
Well, I'm going to start with a shout out, and you talking about the Olympic Games, and that shout out is to 𝗫𝗏 Vaughn, who is at 41 years old, goes into her final competition before going to the Winter Games, and apparently ruptures fully her ACL, but has said she's coming back, that she's planning on competing. And I will just say this. I mean, 𝗫𝗏 Vaughn, she's, I have no idea how she's going to be able to do it. But you cannot say that she is anything other than a badass. So I'm going to be pulling for her just to make it down the hill. And if she does anything better, then she's even more amazing. All right. So as far as anything I'm looking forward to, of course, Super Bowl, always an exciting time. And of course, the Winter Games, which we've talked about quite a bit. From a business story standpoint, this, what's going on with this RSN situation and the teams that were on Main Street, which was the FanDuel Sports Network, all those teams have basically pulled out. It looks like Main Street's going to have to go into bankruptcy. There was no lifeline from DAZN to acquire them and save them. And it just looks like all of the momentum, Tim, is going toward a nationalized RSN, particularly for baseball. We know that Adam Silver wants to do that on the NBA side. But this is significant, and we know the RSN situation is changing and is tough for anyone other than these big market teams that have had long-standing relationships. such as the Dodgers we've talked about recently and their RSN, or the New York situation. Some of this is going to go to the Victory Plus streaming platform. The Dallas Stars started on that. It seems to have proven to be a success. So just continued, I guess, upheaval, but hopefully we're moving towards something that'll be, kind of settle it and move more toward a streaming model in the future. It's just an important story to follow.
Yeah, for sure. So, David, this has become an annual tradition. We have a prediction on the Super Bowl, not only who we think is going to win, but what we think the viewership numbers are going to be. I am going to be fully transparent with you because I respect you. I was on the phone with somebody from the NBC research group yesterday, serendipitously, and if that weren't enough, he's a friend of mine by the name of 𝗨𝗏𝗏. He actually came from Nielsen. So I am going to make my prediction first.
Okay.
All right. So in the game, I think that the Seahawks are going to win 35-28.
All right.
That's my prediction on the score. Last year was a record-setting audience. It was 127.7 million viewers. Right. I think we're going to hit 129 million.
Okay. A few things. I'm picking Seattle as well. Your total number is over the over-under on it right now. So I'm going a little lower than that. I'm going 24-21 Seattle. Good game. And my prediction is a little higher. I'm going, and it's, because I don't think the matchup necessarily is the thing that's going to draw to it. But I'm just thinking with all of the continued advancement in big data, I'm going 131.5.
Wow. Okay.
Which is a big leap.
So you're not taking into account the Kid Rock factor.
It's funny because I put this prediction on before all of the hype around the alternate halftime show, and maybe it will. It shouldn't affect the game numbers. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see. It's not going to, but anyway.
And I will make one other prediction. A lot of the same people who say they refuse to watch Bad Bunny will talk on Monday about how bad his show was.
Right. Everybody seemed to know what he said at the Grammys.
Yeah.
But I guess you don't have to watch the show anymore to kind of see all
that stuff. And I will end the show on the same, end my comment on the same note that I ended an earlier segment, which is I call bullshit on that.
Yeah, okay. Speaking of ending, let's bring this episode to a close. Another huge thanks to Brandon Steiner, founder of the Collectible Exchange. I'm wishing everyone a fantastic Super Bowl Sunday and best of luck in any pools you've entered. Safe travels to fans and Sportsbiz folks on their way to Northern Italy for the Winter Games, or Northern California for the Super Bowl. As always, and most importantly, a big thanks to our listeners for spending any amount of time with us each week. Be sure to share, follow, subscribe, engage with us, comment, find out more about us at dpandmcgee.com. Anything, any comments, any engagement, very, very much appreciated. So until next time, I'm DP, he's McGhee, and we'll talk soon.